The Bastion Wars. The Bastion Wars. What's the matter, kid? You never heard of the Bastion Wars? Why is that? Why? You've seen this picture before, haven't you? You've seen this picture before, but you've never heard of the Bastion Wars? Why is that? I first read this book and I was delighted. And then my little brother told me to read this one by the same guy, by Henry Zhao. This one, my goodness. This one, not as much goodness as I had hoped. Crunchy, vivid, and memorable. Next time I need a galaxy burned, I'm sending for Mr. Zhao. Henry Zhao. His name's on both covers. It's not only on both covers, but look, it gets that. Okay, so this will be what I'm reading. I never got through this one. There was such a huge disconnect between both. Henry Zhao is a plagiarist. His ideas apparently were not his own. And I can see why it's an issue, because in this one right here, things just happen, and that's kind of just the way there's no like great symmetry. There's an overall narrative which this gives you a small piece of, but it doesn't seem cohesive. It doesn't seem greater than the sum of its parts. I don't think Henry Zhao did anything wrong. I personally don't. And if he did do something wrong, if he had have done something wrong, why make his book the poster child for Chaos Space Marines for what, half a decade now? Why give him this exclusive art if they didn't support his endeavor? Warhammer is plagiarism. There is nothing original about Warhammer besides the combination in which these themes are used. So without further ado, the Blood Gorgons, a book of controversy. Come dawn, the small craft settled on a disused runway 16 kilometers east of the Malaysian capital. The landing struts sought purchase on the broken rockcrete, and Gamadin of the Blood Gorgons emerged. And Gamadin of the Blood Gorgons emerged purposefully. His men followed him, stepping down the landing ramp into the quiet morning. He led the way, parting the tall weeds that choked the landing strip as they threaded west towards the distant city lights. The sun was rising, spilling a weak light over the disrepair of Malaysia. Along the way, rockcrete blockhouses struggled out from the bushes. Their windows were broken, their roofs collapsed, and they had been abandoned long ago. The wind moved amongst the yellowing plant life, rustling the dead grass and shuddering the knotted, leafless brambles. In the distance, the rustling frame of an airmill lay on its side, its skeleton scorched white by bomb blasts. Gamadin and his Blood Gorgons scanned the broken panes of glass, their helmet arrays searching for thermal heat. There was none to be found except the tiny skittering signatures of rodent life. All clear, reported one of Gamadin's companions. Remain alert and adjust your auspices, replied Gamadin. They may mean to deceive us. Hearing his words, Gamadin's men spaced themselves out into a wide echelon. They bent low, the butts of their guns locked tight against their shoulders. At the fore, Gamadin walked upright, almost nonchalantly, as he led them to the Belaisian capital. He held out his palm, skimming the tall grass with one hand as he walked, and the other hand behind his back. He gripped the handle of a heavy tulwar blade. They were large, these men, and some would say they were not men at all. They were post-humans, living constructs that evolved from the human form into a singular purpose of warfare. They were mortal things, but most whispered their names with a superstitious fear reserved for phantoms and demons. There were 9 such warriors following Gamadin, encased in plate and horn. They moved slowly and deliberately, as if they lived by their own rhythm, and the world simply orbited their presence. Like their lord, each traitor marine wore power armor, the color of burnt umber. Barnacles and fossilized organisms spread across the sweeping surface of each plate. There was an organic element to their regalia, accentuated by the mutant growth of dorsal fins, quills, and hard, segmented shells. Shambling ancient, slow, and terrible, the 8 impassives appeared not to move at all as the landscape glided beneath their feet. Beneath them, almost as an afterthought, ghosted the witch, Anko Moore, following behind, and a tower of rigid armor, with curtains of black silk trailing from his shoulders. Unlike his brethren, Moore was pensive, his fists clenched and unclenching. Unhelmed, his equine face was painted white, but the war markings could not mask the agitation in his eyes. He watched the still grass and blinked against the rising sun. Nearby, leafhoppers chirped, promising a hot, quiet day. There was still a tension in the dawn, a fragile peace that could not last. Mur could feel that taut energy in the wind. Picking up speed, Gamadin and his warriors cut through the yellowing hills that bordered the capital. They stopped every now and again, trying to catch the scent of a human, a pack of blackened hunters, crashing through dry branches, lifting their heads to taste the air. Belasia lay ahead, a shoulder of rockreet that surfaced above the flatlands and pastures. In the distance, yet clearly audible, the early morning was accompanied by the waking screams of thousands. The weather was unusually fine in the capital state of Belasia. The sun shone lime bright in the highways and girded austere buildings. Such temperate weather only contrasted with the depressive state of each precinct. The air was hazed with heat and summer dust. There was not a single window within the rectangular ministry blocks and tenements that remained intact. Life still dwelled there, but it was sporadic and rare. The long silence of the day was interrupted only by sudden and intense swells of gunfire. Malaysia had once been a stable world of the Imperium. High density city blocks dotted efficient highways that traversed the wide plains of chemically wilted flora. It was neither a metropolis nor a thriving port of trade, but its governance had been effective. A modest export of coal and non ferrous materials to the domestic subsector maintained a reasonable standard of living for its large laboring populace. Like their plain proto imperial architecture, Malaysians were an uninspired group. Austerity, order, and economic prudence were the prevailing ideology, alongside honest work for the emperor's glory. But this stability had been undone by the discovery of rich mineral seams along the Malaysian shelf that the Civil War following was all but inevitable. Like all civil wars, it became a battle of interests. The wealthy collared the poor, and the poor fought amongst themselves. The military chieftains of the Belagian PDF were quick to declare their interests in the mineral wealth, mobilizing Belagia's red-collar regiments to forcefully secure mining sites. In reaction, the imperial administration levied a conscript force and transformed their modest primary production sectors into industries of war. The ensuing conflict wiped out 30% of adult males in Belagia within a decade.